Hey everyone, my name is Matt. Welcome to my backyard. Today is July 26th and this is my weekly shop update. So as you can see, I've made a lot of progress on the farmhouse table this week. I got the breadboard ends all attached, so that means the tabletop is all ready as far as construction goes. It's ready for finish, prep, and finish. And I've also gotten a lot of progress done on the base. The side assemblies are complete, the connecting rails are complete, and now all that's left on the base are the braces that will add a little more rigidity to the whole structure. So let me show you how the breadboard ends went on, and then I'll show you how the whole base went together. So first off, on the breadboards, I started by drilling the holes that will receive the pegs, which will fix the breadboards to the end of the table. Then I can transfer the hole location from the breadboard to the tenon on the end of the table. And I'm going to drill the hole slightly closer to the shoulder so that as the peg is driven through this hole, it will pull the breadboard end tight to the shoulder. Now the two outside tenons need to have their holes elongated so that as the top expands and contracts, that peg has somewhere to go. So I do that with a round file just to give that peg a little bit of wiggle room. Now to install the breadboard, I apply glue to just the center tenon only, and I can start driving in the pegs. The center peg I glued all the way through, and the outside ones I started dry, and when they got most of the way through, I added a little bit of glue to the peg just to keep it in place and keep it from backing out. Once the glue is dry, they can be trimmed flush, and then the ends of the breadboards can also be trimmed flush to the table as well. Now a little bit of flashback. Here is the stock for the base when I cut it almost 2 years ago. This slab here is most of the base, and then the next one I cut off the log was the rest of the stock for this. So here is all the rough parts laid out. I'm getting ready to start milling them all up. All the pieces get face jointed and then edge jointed square. Now most of these pieces I had doubled up, so I had to rip them in half to get two square pieces, or two rough square pieces. Then those pieces can get jointed square and plane to a perfect square. I'm going to start on the joinery for the legs, so I'll cut those to length and they get a 10-degree angle on each end. That's going to be the splay angle of the side assemblies. I laid out the mortises and cut those on the mortiser, using both faces against the fence to keep that mortise centered until I cleared out all the waste. Next I'll lay out the tenon on the end of the leg. I'm going to wrap this around with the bevel gauge and the square to get a perfect shoulder line all the way around. And then I use the dado stack as the table saw to remove the bulk of the waste, staying a little bit away from the scribe line, and then I'll clean up exactly to the shoulder line with some chisels at the bench. And once that tenon's fitting well, I can cut it to length. And then here is the side assembly getting ready to receive the lower rail. I set up the side assembly like this and laid out the tenon locations for the lower rail and cut those exactly the same way as I did on the legs. Now for the connecting rails to connect it to side assemblies together, I laid out those mortises, cut them the same way as the other mortises, and then to cut the tenon on the end of the rail, since these things are so long, I didn't really have a whole lot of room in my shop. I decided to just cut these by hand. So I use a saw to make a cut along the shoulder line starting from both sides, and then I use the rip saw to start cutting the tenon out, again coming in from both sides, and then sawing all the way down to the base. I cleaned up these shoulders the same way with the chisels, and then I could do a little test assembly. So tomorrow I'll get started on adding the braces, and hopefully I can get those knocked out tomorrow, and then this thing will be ready for finish. A few people have asked me what finish I'm planning to use on this thing. I am planning to first go over with a base coat of CPES, clear penetrating epoxy sealer. It's a really thin epoxy. It's almost like water. It gets really absorbed into the fibers and hardens. So it's going to do two things for me. Since some of this wood has a little bit of punkiness to it, this is going to help to stabilize that and really harden it and bring it back to being stable and strong like it should be if it was actually not rotten. And the other thing it's going to do is it's going to help prevent future rot. This is white oak, so it is extremely rot resistant, but that just gives me a little extra bonus. I'm also going to epoxy the feet or the bottom of the legs where the legs meet the ground, and that'll help the legs to prevent them from pulling moisture up off of the ground. Now for the top coat, I'm going to use Epiphanes, which is a marine varnish. This is a very high gloss finish, which I don't really want, so I'm going to go ahead and knock that down after I get my build done. That thing has time to cure. I'm going to knock that down to more of like a satin kind of look, just to get a more natural look, but still had the protection of the marine varnish, which is more the look I'm going for. Bye! So that's the progress on the table this week. Let's take a look at some viewer projects. First up this week is a coffee table by RJ. This was made out of a tree from his backyard that was removed due to carpenter ant damage, and the lumber from the tree ended up being ambrosia maple. The coffee table is 40 by 50 inches. The center legs are joined with a through Morrison tenon, and the side legs are joined with half-lap joints. He also made a chest of drawers out of the lumber, and he plans to make a dining room set as well. Next is a crib and changing table / dresser by Tyler. These were his first furniture attempts, and the crib was made from recovered barnwood and 2x4s with vertical slats. It's stained with a dark walnut Danish oil and polyurethane. He carved designs into the 2x4 slats with his CNC, and the dresser is made from more 2x4s for the frame and maple warm wood for the tops and drawer faces and the sides. And that one's finished using amber shellac. Next is another crib. This one is a Sapele crib by Daryl. And it's pretty similar to the one that I made with the rising sides, but his here has a paneled back, which is a really cool look. Next up is a walnut and curly maple box with spline miters by Nathan. The box is made from Peruvian walnut, and the curly maple is used for the splines and the lid panel. Lastly this week is a green and green inspired curly maple bookcase by Jake. Jake is 17 years old, and he built this bookcase in his woodworking class at school. So one quick announcement, this Saturday, July 30th at noon Central Time, I'll be having a live Ask Matt. That's an opportunity for you to stop in and ask me any questions you want live, and I'll do my best to answer them right there on the spot. If you can't make it, of course, I'll take questions ahead of time. Just leave me a comment, let me know it's for Saturday's Ask Matt, or just shoot me an email with your question, and I'll be sure to get to it, hopefully. Sometimes there's a lot of questions, but I'll try my best to answer all of the pre-submitted questions as well as the live questions on Saturday. So that's about all for this week. Thank you as always for watching. I greatly appreciate it. If you have any questions or comments about anything I talked about today, anything here on the patio or back in the shop, please feel free to leave me a comment. As always, I'll be happy to answer any questions you might have. And until next time, happy woodworking. Whee! Woo! I'm stuck.